What's up, Motocross Action? Welcome to another episode of Shaken Not Stirred. I'm Josh Mosiman, and today we have a special treat for you. 500cc two-strokes are making a comeback, and we're not exactly sure why. Maybe it's the excitement in building a custom bike that isn't available to the public anymore, or maybe 500cc riders like the idea of riding on something that the average Joe can't handle. But either way, MXA, we're not complaining. The KX Guru Racing gang built us this third generation big bore two-stroke they call the KTX500E. We first met the KX Guru boys when we tested Sean Collier's Kawasaki KX500 a few years ago. It was a great bike that had a ton of low to mid power, but it fell off early on top, forcing us to short shift. For this build, KX Guru Racing took their blueprint from Sean Collier's bike and tweaked it to make a broader, four-stroke-like power band, and they called it the Sean Collier Stage 3 engine. For the chassis, they used a 2016 KTM 250 SXF frame and cut out the cradle of it so the KX500 engine could be shoehorned in. Then they found a 2007 KTM 450 SXF frame and cut the lower frame rails out of it to weld onto the newer 250 SXF frame. It was a nerve-wracking and time-consuming task. Once done, the engine mount locations were located and measured to ensure the proper engine angle. Since it wasn't made to fit into the KTM chassis, Crazy Al's Racing manufactured the custom spacers out of titanium. So what is a KTX500E? Well, you guessed it. The E in the KTX500E stands for electric start, and if you've ever tried kickstarting a 500cc two-stroke, you know how happy we were about this. Everything on this machine was custom, besides the 2016 KTM 250 SXF lower clamp and subframe. KX Guru Racing started with a set of TSR crankcases, which included a hydraulic clutch, a two-piece clutch cover from Australia. Then they added a Boyson KX250 water pump and impeller. Fellow 500cc aficionado Adam Miller built them a custom head for the KX500 that used the KTM radiator hose fittings and rechambered it to KX Guru Racing specifications. He also installed a trick decompression release in the head. The crank was highly modified and made into what is called a turbo crank. A turbo crank is made by cutting scoops around each side of the crank wheels to improve volumetric efficiency of the engine. The crank was also stuffed by the Rouse family, then sent to Paris Concepts for the induction modifications. After all the crank work was complete, it was mated to a hand-polished Wasner rod that was carefully balanced. KX Guru Racing had built some factory Kawasaki KX500 off-road racing engines back in the day for Dasher Abbott. Much of the basic cylinder porting mods came from this past knowledge, with a few updates. The cylinder was sent out to another past KX500 factory engine builder, Tom Morgan of TMR. Back in the day, Tom was Jeff Ward's wrench when Wardy raced the AMA 500 Nationals. Tom bored, decked, and cut the base of the cylinder to KX Guru's specs. The most timely part of the build was the power valves. They were completely redesigned and modified to get the shape and flow they were looking for. As for the transmission, all the parts are brand new and hand polished. A bulletproof Hinson basket was used with all of its supporting hardware to support the extreme power of the 500cc power plant. And for the carburetor, they went with the Kian quad vent air striker with a custom MRE reed holder system for the Moto Tassinari V-Force 2 reed cage. The factory cone pipe was custom built by Growler Racing. It took a lot of hard work to make the Pit Viper series pipe clear the big starter on the left side of the bike and the water pump on the right. However, the Kickstarter boss was plugged, so they had one less thing to worry about. The muffler was borrowed from a 2016 FMF KTM 250SX, and it was re-cored and built to fit the custom KX500 pipe. In an effort to keep the weight down, as they already added 13 pounds with the electric starter, battery, and supporting hardware, just about every other bolt used was titanium, save for a few high-stress areas. Anyone who has raced an open bike knows that 500cc two-stroke engines can be rattle traps. To reduce vibration, Fast Company flex bars and impact pegs were used. A hammerhead KX450 shift lever was used with a 20mm extended tip, as well as their brake lever, although the brake lever definitely had to be heavily modified to fit around the KX500 engine. As for the suspension, the original 2016 WP 4CS components were tossed in the trash. Looking out for our own well-being, we put the KX Guru guys in touch with Öhlins, and they bought the exact components that we tested on our 2019 KTM 450 SXF to use for their build. Many great companies came together to build this exotic KTX500E. Decal Works customized the graphics, Works Connection supplied the titanium fasteners, skid plate, and more. Renthal supplied the chain and sprockets. Tubeless tubes were used. Faster USA laced up Excel A60 rims on their custom green hubs with stainless steel spokes. Twinner provided the air filter. Motomaster added the oversized front rotor and braidless stainless steel brakes. Guts Racing built the seat. TM Design Works added the bulletproof chain guides. CRM Carbo Tank did the tank, and Moto Gear Speed Shop pitched in a bunch as well. So what was it like to ride? This beast produced 72 horsepower on the dyno, and yes, we felt every bit of it on the track. The eye-watering power was intense to say the least. The power was beyond potent, although extremely usable at the same time, and it was very well metered. It was easy to ride because it didn't have that short power band nature that an old school 500cc two-stroke has. We didn't have to worry about the power falling off on its face. It just continually built power, and we didn't have to shift unless we wanted to. That being said, we did run into a little jetting issue and blew a base gasket right off the bat. But luckily, the KX Guru team was ready for any problem that might arise and had us back on the track in no time. This KX500 rips the doors off a current 450cc four-stroke competition. So how did it handle? It was impressive. With most 500cc bikes, you aren't always sure what the bike is going to do. With the KTM chassis and Öhlins suspension, MXA's test riders had confidence in the bike through the rough Glen Helen chop. However, when the wheels left the ground or when mistakes were made, we could definitely feel the weight of the Kawasaki KTX500E. It was a bit tough to maneuver in the air, but unless MXA test riders were trying to whip the bike sideways, they didn't really mind the added weight. The forks and shock worked well together, as the forks held up higher in their stroke and had lots of room for absorbing bumps. The shock was as close to perfect as you can get. The rear never deflected, bounced, kicked sideways, or wallowed. The Öhlins TTX shock followed the ground with precision. Test riders never got any head shake thanks to a GPR steering stabilizer, and it turned well once in the corners. Under a load, the front end wanted to push, and we were pretty sure that was due to the forks being flush in the triple clamps. We wanted to raise them, but we couldn't because the beefy flex handlebars were in the way. Our test riders did notice some vibration, but it wasn't anything like the runaway washing machine style 500s of the past. It was manageable. Also, another quibble was that the shifting was very stiff. We really had to think about making the shift. It did shift better when the throttle was off, but that definitely isn't the best way to ride a bike fast. The power of the engine would make the shifter bind, but with a little forethought, you could get the job done. Overall, this was an unbelievable bike to ride. At times, the MXA test riders cringe when assigned to ride bikes of this nature. Why? That's easy. We've been scared before on custom bikes with parts fly off, frames break, and more often than not, the triple clamp bolts aren't tight. We've actually been learned to be scared. However, the Kawasaki KTX500E only scared us when we wanted it to. This bike could easily hole shot a 450cc National and also work well for the average Joe. However, to build one takes an army of men and some serious dough. Thanks to the guys at KX Guru Racing for putting together this awesome 500cc two-stroke for us to ride. And this isn't going to be the last time you'll see this bike. We're actually putting it up against another project 500cc two-stroke for a little two-stroke shootout. Check out motocrossactionmag.com for the latest news, reviews, and bike tests, and also Supercross results. And also click the subscribe button here on YouTube to stay up to date with the latest motocross action videos and to keep an eye out for the next 500cc project bike shootout.